Okay, so I'm going to talk about how I built my books page. And there's a few places you can find me, my website, Mastodon, Blue Sky, and pretty much anywhere my username is Bob Monsour, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. So let's get into it. Oops. All right, so who am I? I'm retired. I live in Northern California. I made the 11 bundle site, which is a curated feed of 11 resources. Most of you probably know about it. If not, go check it out. I think it's pretty cool. And there's a story behind it that was just kind of a bug up my ass that I felt compelled to do it about almost 2 years ago. And I've spent a bunch of years in tech in various forms. I won't go into that. If you go to my site, go to the About page or find me on LinkedIn, you can find out all the stuff that I've been involved in. But I'm currently obsessed with 11D and I'm enjoying it for a lot of it is for the distraction from our current political environment. But there you go. So here's what I'm going to go through. I'm going to go talk about the elements of the page, the bits of eleventy that make it work, that show you some of the data and the code that for those bits. I'll show you how I add new books, and then I'll share some of the book pages that inspired me and things about them that I thought were cool. So here, this is kind of just a segment of the total books page, but the basic elements are there's this navigation that you can click through and find out, the books that I read in a particular year, the book I'm currently reading, books I've read this year, and then it goes on and on and on to back to whatever it is, 2010. So the 11D bits, there's a handful of things. There's global data in the data directory. I've got a JSON file with an array of entries for each of the books, and I'll show you what those look like. I've got a JavaScript data file that does computations over that data to generate some of the data that's used in the template. And there's a filter that I use to generate the star rating. And then lastly, a Nunjucks template for the book page itself, and then an include for the various sections that is a per book item, given that there are those three distinct sections. So the directory structure of the site looks something like this, and I've extracted everything just to show only the elements that that are relevant here. Book rating filter, the books that's the JavaScript data file, the books data file, a book item that's just kind of like think of it as a component for each book, and then the books page itself. And all of this source is available on my GitHub repo. And I'm going to be posting the slides after this as well. So the relevant parts, again, these are the things that I talked about just a minute ago. And that's what they do. So the source of the book data, where did I get the book data? You can go to Goodreads and you can, I think I may still have this open. Let's see. No, it's not there. Okay, so if you go to Goodreads and you go to my books, come on, go to my books. There you go. You can find at the very bottom here, if you can see my cursor circling, it says import and export. And if you go there, you can export your library and it exports it as a CSV file. And then what I did was I took that and I put it into Google Sheets. What you wind up with is something that looks like this. It's a massive bunch of stuff, way more stuff than I need. And so I went here's the set of steps I went through. I put it in Google Sheets. I trim it down to the essentials. I exported that to another CSV file, and then I convert the CSV to a JSON, an array of JSON objects. So here's the mess that you get. I trim it down to just the essentials, and then I export this as a CSV. And there are a bunch of different websites that do file conversions in different formats. Many of them, whether you're trying to take a YouTube video and get an MP3 out of it, they're usually riddled with ads. And so you have to kind of sift through. And I forget exactly which one I used, but I wound up, able to create a JSON file from this set of data. So this is the essence of what a book looks like. And this was a great book, by the way. For those of you that were, gosh, when was this? This might have been before you were born, but there was a guy that when the World Trade Center towers were still being constructed, he strung a cable across the two of them and did a high wire act across it. It was really a remarkable thing. And this is a novel that centers around various characters and how they were, what they were doing at the time. It was a really great book. So, but essentially, a book item is a book cover, it's a title, it's an author, and then a rating. So those are what books look like. And this is what an array entry in the books.json file looks like. You got the title, the author, an ISBN, and we'll talk a little bit about that because that's sort of the center of everything in terms of where you get the other data. A rating list 1 to 5, and the year read is the date that Goodreads had. So it's not really just the year, it's the actual date that I recorded that I read the book. And then I'll talk about the cover. Sometimes covers aren't as available as you might think in the places where they are. So I did a lot of manual work, in other words, to get covers for some of these. But the ISBN, the interesting thing about the ISBN, apparently it went through an iteration from being a 10-digit number to being a 13-digit number. And this is all the stuff I have is 13-digit ISBNs. And I actually went down a bit of a rabbit hole on Amazon looking for ISBNs at one point for some books because well, let me get into it. When I get into the buy link part of this, which is you can click on the book cover or the title and it'll take you to bookshop.org. I had set up an Amazon affiliate setup and I was manually getting all the affiliate links and putting them in the book data, but it was incredibly tedious. Even though I went through it, I sort of backed off of doing that and decided to use bookshop.org instead because they're a lot easier to construct. It used to be with Amazon that when it was a 10-digit ISBN, the ISBN number was the same as Amazon. I forget what they call it. It's an ASIN. It's an Amazon standard identity number kind of thing. And they used to be identical when they were 10-digit ISBNs. Once they became 13, it didn't work anymore. So you couldn't, programmatically construct a link to your Amazon affiliate thing using an ISBN number. So that's sort of why I switched to Bookshop. And the covers, most of the covers I got from Open Library, and I'll show you how I get those, but not all of them. So again, I wound up doing a bunch of manual stuff. But if you look at the data, I don't even know how many books there are in the whole site, but it's not that many. So there's remember if we remember there was a thing called local cover as one of the data items on the JSON array entry. What I do is if that is set to true, I wound up creating an image that is basically it's the book title, slugified is the name of the image, and I download that image. I basically let me show you here. I go to Amazon, right click on the book cover, save it, open it up in Pixelmator Pro, change the width to 180 pixels, and then export it to my site. And Pixelmator Pro is really nice in that it remembers every time you've exported to some place, and that's the place it'll use again. So when I was doing a bunch of these, the process of capturing these was really quite simple. So if it's a local book cover, I get it locally out of my assets directory. And if it's not a local book cover, I go to Open Library, which has a really simple way to construct the images. You can get a small, medium, or large. So you basically, there's a base URL. You attach the ISBN number, depending on the size you want. And here I'm using a medium-sized image. And there's all text in this, but I didn't include it here just because it made the code look a lot messier. But it is there, so don't shoot me. We talked about that. So what does the buy link look like? So here's the code in the middle here is the same that I just showed you about the cover. I just basically wrap that in similar to getting the covers to create a link to bookshop.org. They also have a pretty standard way to do it. You just, this is my affiliate link, and I don't really care if anybody sees that or knows it. It's not like it's an environment variable. If people want to use it, I'll get paid, so I don't really mind. I basically take that base, attach the ISBN number to it, and wrap that book cover in a link. And so that's how I create the link. And again, there's all text on the images. So how do I then? So we've talked about the book cover. We've talked about the buy link. The title, the link on the title is also done similarly. I take the book title and wrap it in a an anchor link to the buy page on bookshop.org. So how do I take the ratings, which are from 1 to 5 in the object, and convert it into a star rating? It's a simple filter, and I can show you what that looks like. It basically takes the rating and basically loops over it, subtracting 1 and keeps adding a star, and then returns that string of stars. It's not terribly complicated. And again, the source for all this is readily available. So the year. So one of the, if you remember at the top, there's a set of links that links to each year. So I have the page divided by year, but then I need to create a nav that links to those. And so and I remember I talked about having a JavaScript data file. And what that JavaScript data file does is it goes over all of the JSON, the array of JSON book entries, and develops a set of years that become the nav. So this is really the entire thing for the nav. But let's take a look at what that looks like. If we go to books.js and we scroll down here. So let me start at the top real quick. So I import, this is a set of functions that gathers all this different sets of data. I import effectively the books.json file. I create an array of the current books. And those are, and I haven't gotten into this yet, but I'll get to it a little in a slide or two later. Then there are the dated books, and then there are a bunch of books at the bottom of the page, and they're just books that were in Goodreads, and but my Goodreads data isn't perfect. I marked that I read them, but I don't know when I read them, so I have a whole undated section on the page. So what I do is I take the dated books and I wind up creating an array that looks like this, year 2025, year 2024, all the way down to the years of the dated books. And it creates this unique set of years. And then I want to create an array. This is the years array. And the reason, the one thing that's interesting, you'll notice I put a Y here in front of the year. And the reason I need that Y is you can't remember those links at the top are like 2024, let's say 2015. And it turns out that in CSS, your ID values in your HTML can't start with a number. They have to start with a letter. So I had to tack a Y on the front. And so that is how, oops, bear with me. That is how I wind up. So I wind up taking to get the so I don't want those Y's to appear at the top in the set of links. I just want the numbers. So I wind up using this replace filter that takes the Y off of it. It's and then I don't want to have, this is the slash that gets inserted in between it, and if it's the last entry, I don't want a trailing slash. So again, not terribly complicated, but it was interesting to work through. So we talked about the 3 different segments of the page: the currently reading, the dated books, the undated books, and each of those are generated by those JavaScript functions that I showed you. So a couple of special cases here. If the rating is blank, that's what's, and the year read is currently, you'll notice on the books page that the currently read book doesn't have a rating yet because I'm still reading it. So that's one special case. The other special case is the undated books. So I can group all of those together. So here's the currently reading. You can see there's no rating on it. And then these are the undated books that are at the bottom of the page, and all in between those two are all the years. So if we go back here, and again, I kind of talked through this. So I go through the whole array and I look for where the year read is currently to generate the currently, the set array, and then for the dated books, I don't really, let's see. Yeah, if it's not undated and it's not currently, those are the ones that are dated. And then the undated books are all the ones that have undated in the year read. So, and then at the end of all this, I basically return all of these different variables that are available to me in the templates. And you'll notice there's a current books count, which I don't currently use. Well, I do look over that because I might be reading. I'm actually about to start the book I'm reading now. This LBJ biography, volume one, is quite large, and I'm about to start weaving it into reading another book. So I want to be able to support reading more, having a currently reading books more than one, but I don't have the CSS worked out for that to show those sanely. All right, so how do I add new books to the site? Let me go back to the code here and show you so this is the entire, you know, books file. If I go to the end of this, what I do is I use a VS Code snippet. I just go to the end of this, hit comma, hit enter, I hit BK and tab, and I can then put, title of book here, tab here, by me, and then put in and just cycle through all of this. I think I just hit a bogus thing here. All right, bear with me. But that's essentially how I add a book using, and I'll show you what that snippet looks like. The snippets are really quite powerful, and I actually use them um, to generate front matter when I'm creating a new post. This is what a VS Code snippet looks like. It has BK as the shorthand, and then the different variables that you get, and that's how I generate the new books. And these are some of the sites. And I'm gonna go back to the browser and walk through some of these and show you the parts about them that I liked. But these are, except actually Dan is one that post dates my creating the site, but there's a thing about it that I think is really cool. Let's see, let's go back here. We can close that. Oh, here's the Open Library Covers API, and you can see down here how to construct, and I showed you this in the code. It's really quite simple. So this is what's interesting is when I had the idea I wanted to do this, but then all of a sudden I wound up seeing a bunch of different book sites and people were talking about them in various places. And then, as I said in the blog post about this, I happened to be on jury duty, and there was a guy who works in Adobe and lives near me. We wound up being on the same jury, and we got to know each other. And he had a bookshelf on his site, and I started asking him about it. So it was kind of a weird confluence of events that led me to do it. But this is one of the ones that he wrote a post about it as well, and he talked about Goodreads used to have an API where you could pull the data out yourself, but they don't have it anymore. So export is really your only recourse if you have a lot of Goodreads data. And then this is Corey's, and this is kind of where I borrowed/stole the whole idea of having the links by year, which I thought was pretty cool. Oh, this is this guy, Dan Jewett, and it's an interesting site board. He has this section called First Paragraphs, where for some of the books, he's extracted what he thought were kind of cool first paragraphs of those books. I thought that was kind of neat. And I may in the future add like a reflections or not a review, but just thoughts about a book and make that a link in each of the book entries at some point. This is Melanie Richards, and she has an interesting thing on some of hers. She has this notation that says DNF, meaning did not finish, which I believe somebody was telling me that Goodreads or one of the book tracking things has that designation. But I probably would have a long list of did not finishes if I did that. And then this is Sean Boysen, who's the guy I had jury duty with in his book site. So, and these are all also included on my blog post about this topic. So if you go to my site, you can either use the search facility or just go to the blog and look for the books, and you'll find the blog entry. And all of these are listed at the end. I just added that the other day, actually, because we were doing this. So we went over the elements of the books page, the bits of Eleventy that make it work, the data and the code, how I add new books, and the pages that inspired me. Let me go back here. And then this is the page itself and a bunch of kind of front matter, if you will. But then you can see, I can go to 2020 and see what I read in 2020. And then they keep going. And then here are the books that I don't remember when I read them. Um, maybe a vague idea here and there, but that's about it. Okay. Thank you for watching. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm glad you saw it. I'll make the slides available. I'll share a post once the video is posted, and the slides will be linked in there, probably in a PDF file. So that's it. Questions, anybody?
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. That was awesome.